Hello everyone, and welcome back to Star Trek Event Horizon, a Star Trek Adventures 2nd Edition campaign using the rules by Modiphius Entertainment. My name is ELH the Game Master, and joining me are three lovely individuals, and we're really eager to get right back into where we left off on a cliffhanger, so we'll try to get through this pretty quickly. But we'll just sort of go around and have everybody introduce themselves, starting with Peter. Peter, anything you want to shout out, and who you playing?
Hey everybody, I am Peter, or Petrus Aquinas around the interwebs. I am playing Lieutenant Commander Giral, the Chief Engineer, Temerian, and anything to shout out? Not today, maybe
Okay,
sometime.
maybe eventually. All right. Ravenslore, what do you got going on?
Hey, I'm Ravens, Tony. I'm playing Commander Oliver Mason. He's the CO of the Event Horizon, who is cutting themselves into a little bit of a pickle. You can find me playing all sorts of different games on Crucible Games here on Twitch and YouTube.
Nice. And last but not least, Steadfast, what do you got going on?
Hello, Steadfast Pig, or the Richard here. I'm playing Lieutenant Commander Zephyt, our Denobulan navigator slash security officer. I've the same mindset of I'm excited to figure out what type of chicanery we're about to get into, so I'm ready to go, man.
Awesome. So Techno did make us an intro, but because I had to redo all of OBS, I forgot to put it in, and it didn't occur to me. Thank you, Techno.
Ah,
That is appropriate to hit
Nice,
me with
nice.
threat.
Yep.
That is very appropriate. Thank you. So next session we'll have an intro, but for now we're just going to go straight to the opening log. And Peter, I believe Giral has that honor today.
Chief Engineer's log supplemental. It's been an interesting mission for our second or first. I get those training missions mixed up. Second mission with the ship. We had a mission to go visit the Cytherians, a very powerful race that brings the galaxy to them instead of doing any uh, interstellar travel. We had the daughter of one of the primary leaders board our ship, and we took her on a tour to another system, and we're got to experience. I believe the captain called it ice hockey. Uh, But then we were attacked by a sect of the Cytherians that wished to be more isolationist. So upon returning to the planet, this has become more of a issue than originally thought. And then turns out the daughter has decided to claim political asylum. This seems similar to Kiteo, but I don't know where exactly what our captain's going to decide and how this is going to play out, as we now have warring factions in a race that is far superior to the Federation technologically. I hope it pans out, though, because there's some technology that I would very much like to see. End log.
Very nice. You may have, well, I guess your captain momentum because it didn't reset. So you're at 6. Congratulations. But yes, we resume right where we left off at the end of last session, where you had just come back after escaping the Cytherian probe sent to crash land, overtake, destroy the event horizon with V, the daughter of Castor. Castor being the Cytherian we see at the end of the episode of TNG where the Cytherians make their appearance. And V has just made her request for asylum, where Castor has said, "Oh, well, it's time for you to come back, daughter." And V has literally just said the words, turning to Commander Mason, "Commander, I would like to formally request asylum." And that's exactly where we'll begin. Castor is kind of looking at his daughter like, whoa. And I think all other eyes are probably on Commander Mason in this moment.
Commander Mason will just pause and rub his temples a little bit in this exasperated, what kind of nonsense is this kind of look? And just let that drag on for probably 3 or 4 seconds longer than it really should,
Mm-hmm.
just to see if anyone says anything before he speaks up.
No, I
No, I
think the
imagine that
silence.
slow, like, chair turn, as everybody on the bridge just let it slowly turns towards you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Squeak.
The on what grounds are you claiming asylum?
Well, several grounds, Commander. First of all, we've established that there's a hostile faction wishing my demise. That would mean returning to my planet would put me in their crosshairs once again. Suppose I were to attempt, as I'm sure they would put it, another escape, another olive branch to something like the Federation, something outside of our closely cloistered system. They would just do this again and again until either I'm gone or we become so isolationist that I might as well be gone.
And what makes you think that the Federation is better suited to protect you more than your people are?
And V just sort of motions around at the rest of the bridge of the event horizon and say, just based look at this ship. You have created a ship so capable of so much in such a short amount of time. I guarantee that in 10, 20, 30 years, you will be contemporary with the rest of the Cytherians.
30 years is a long time to keep you alive
This is
with
true. I realize that
subpar technology.
there is a risk you're undertaking if you were to grant me an asylum, but I've shown you where I come from. I've shown you that while it may be a utopia to some, to me it is a hellhole, a prison.
You've shown me that you got bored, but you've also shown me that you are fed and that you're protected. No harm has come to you. You didn't even know what cold was until yesterday.
She doesn't have a reply for that, but she is still looking at you intently.
Caster, is there any reason to believe that this faction would take action against V on your planet?
And Castor, again that big floating old man head on the bridge, just sort of looks at his daughter and goes, "Well, initially when they sent out that first probe, I wasn't too worried. I just thought, oh, we're just going to go check in on my daughter. But then when the additional probes were sent, it began to raise some concern among my people. As you now know, Commander, we are not as united as your United Federation of Planets. We are very much faction based."
I assure you there's plenty of factions in the United Federation of Planets as well. We don't all agree, but we don't typically try to kill each other.
And that is exactly what I mean. Until today, the notion of a Cytherian killing another Cytherian was unheard of. We haven't done such a thing in millennia, if not longer. I will tell you that we have no laws for this. We have no rules for this. We moved past the point of needing law. We moved past the point of needing lawyers.
Sounds like you need some law and lawyers.
You may be onto something, but as I said, we have nobody who is trained in this sort of thing. We quite literally took up the stance that all beings in the universe know right from wrong.
That is remarkably naive. Charming in its own right. I'm more concerned about this secondary faction, or third or fourth. How many factions do you have?
There are 3 mainline and 2 minor.
What's the odds of these other factions or any of your people having witnessed an act of violence, determining that violence is something they can actually consider? Like, what's going on your planet right now?
Note of concern crosses Castor's face, and he says, "It's unclear. We are still in talks about that."
board. How can we help?
Well, I do not know what laws your Federation of Planets has, but my daughter, as much as I am loath to admit it, my daughter does have a point that if nothing is done and she is brought back to the planet, harm could befall her and the rest of her faction. I myself am not a part of their... How did you put it, daughter? And V just sort of rolls her eyes and says, it's the expansionist faction, if you want to be droll about it, Father. We want to leave the home system. We want to learn and explore by doing rather than bringing to us. And Castor sort of just does that old man shake of his head like he's heard this 1,000 times. Yes, yes, I remember now. V's faction is one of the minor ones. As it is, she has a very small following on our planet. And the one that sent out those probes is one of the major factions, one of the major isolationist factions. So, the choice, I suppose, Commander, is do you grant my daughter asylum on whatever grounds you see fit, or do I specifically request your intervention in assuring her safety?
Your specific request for intervention to ensure her safety would make things much easier.
Then let's make it official. Commander, I would like you to consider my daughter's request for asylum and or consider coming down to the planet to mediate.
Mediate? What do you guys think? Should we stick our nose in this? We can, technically.
Technically, it's within our rights and their rights to call us for mediation for some sort of peace council, but if that would yield any positive results is mainly up to how these different factions would gauge our opinions or not. There's the possibility that our presence would simply cause even more strife between the different groups.
I think there's some merit to it, Captain. If nothing else, we can learn more of what's going on. We can always be in the middle of it and say, there isn't much we can do.
There isn't much we can do. The ship is too small to move a faction from this planet to Federation space. There's no other ship currently equipped with a drive like this. How many people do you have, V, in your group?
2, including me.
V, 2 is not a faction. 2 is a club.
You would perhaps consider it a club, but when you are outspoken and standing up for what you think is right, even 1 can be significant.
Significant, yes, but... Okay. Well, I mean, 2 is much easier than 50,000 or something. I was thinking we were dealing with a political party.
And I think Castor almost smiles at that and says, there's only 50,000 of us, Commander.
Okay. V, you are welcome to stay on the ship. And your friend as well. We can make arrangements. Well, you can probably just show up here on your come and go as you see fit. Anyway, you can invite your friend aboard. They will be safe-ish here. Castor, myself, and my senior staff would be more than happy to attempt to mediate this particular problem.
And she nods and says, thank you, Commander. However, as much as you may think I can come and go at will, This is all just a projection. My actual body would have to be moved.
Dare I ask how big that body is?
Just a slight, you're pretty tall yourself, but just a little bit higher, just a little bit higher.
So roughly people-sized.
Humanoid size, yes.
That's good. That's a great start.
However, there is the tricky part of it doesn't really go with your transporter technology.
That's okay. We can land the ship.
Does your physical form require any other modifications or parameters to be safe on board the vessel?
Well, that would depend on how much you wish to accommodate me and my fellow. If you wanted to bring both of our pods aboard, from what I've seen of the event horizon, you would have to fill your cargo bay. We would quite literally fill it to the brim with both of our pods. If you wish to remove me from my pod, which I am amenable to, then I would simply require what any other living being requires: food, light, entertainment, things to keep me from... I'm doing a horrible job of explaining this, but keep my body and mind from deteriorating outside of the pod.
Is that a rapid process if you are not in this pod?
Honestly, I am unsure. The last Cytherian to do this did so millennia ago. From birth, we are put into these pods, and the pods take care of us.
We're going to have to do some scans.
Interesting.
And I think Castor says, please, scan as you will. I can even direct you to my daughter's pod in particular.
Yeah, please do. We'll have to land the ship and see what we can figure out. If you could set up a meeting with the factions that would like to have a conversation, then I would love to speak with them.
Very good. I'll see about arranging that meeting. And Castor disappears, and V remains. Again, it's just her projection. But she smiles and nods and says, well, that went better than I thought. I thought my father was going to... I don't know how to put this to you, Commander, but he's the head of the Isolationist faction. Which means that somebody within his faction is going against his wishes.
Or he tried to have you killed.
I was hoping I wouldn't have to say that, but yes, that is a possibility.
Here's the thing. If I were going to try to kill a bunch of pod-ridden people, wouldn't it be easier to unplug their pod than to send drones after a starship?
You would think, but our pods are very robust when it comes to security and self-sustainment. In fact, I'm pretty certain that you could throw one of our pods into the event horizon of a black hole, and it would still be fine.
Would then their goal have been to either destroy us, intimidate us, and therefore frighten you to cease your advocating?
Right, because if this is a hologram form of some sort, then what harm can be done to it that would also negatively impact your pod?
Well, Lieutenant Commander Dral, you are correct that this was a act of... I don't even know the correct word for it. Scare tactics, perhaps. Or to use the Temerian expression, Peter when the GM spent threat. But to answer your question, Lieutenant Commander Zephyt, even though this would have destroyed my projection, it would have caused some harm to me back in my pod. For when you are projecting, or at least when a Cytherian projects their mind somewhere, the mind is present in that location. In other words, it wouldn't exactly be a headache, but it would be more akin to a stroke, a seizure, perhaps, would be the most analogous description I could give.
I have so many questions.
I guess that does lead to the potential security threat that if we do expose ourselves to the planet, there's no reason that this isolationist movement would not attempt some other way to harm us if it was more about our presence and scaring us off. I think that it's logical that it may occur again if we are no longer on our vessel when we go down to the planet. So we'll have to take all the necessary precautions.
Well, we could always just tell them that if any harm comes to us or any probes approach our vessel, it will warp back to Federation space and go get friends. Isolationists won't want more friends showing up, I'm sure.
We just need to not inform them how many friends we can bring at a time.
Yeah, well, I kind of already did that.
We do know that we can at least bring 1 to 2 other ships with us based on the simulation with the space whale, but that would be a problem. I would have to do more math.
Well, if we could drop it a Kira out here, that would change the metrics pretty quick. But I don't think that's the intent.
Yep.
Okay. Well, first of all, we got to figure out if we can have these people survive outside of their pods. So it sounds like we could tow their pods if we had to.
Let's scan these pods and see the beast of Tanagra we're dealing with.
All right. So, since it's been a hot limit, let me remind myself everybody's science scores. So, Gerald has a science of 2, but you have an engineering of 5. Zephit has a science of 1. Okay, and then Mason is the one that has the science of 5. Yeah, I knew somebody had a science of 5. I'll let you decide who's going to actually do the roll here, but it will be the standard reason science. The event horizon will assist you with a sensors science. And due to the enigmatic nature of the Cytherian pods, I think it's fair for me to say that this is a difficulty of 4.
Ship has the 18 complication range, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just double checking.
I will certainly do the roll.
I will roll the ship then. We have momentum to burn.
Mm-hmm. You're capped on momentum at the moment.
So, yep, that seems about right.
At least it wasn't a complication.
True.
I don't really have a value, but I can burn, get 2 extra dice here?
Yeah, it would be 3 momentum.
Yep.
And then if anyone wants to assist, it's 1 momentum for each additional
per extra assist. Mm-hmm.
Well, my science is a 2, which is better than a 1. But...
Yeah, exactly. What can we use? Maybe Dwell's engineering in some way to get ask for a scan of the pod.
Could we bring in a supporting character?
Yeah, you could bring in a supporting character, though I will say that's already the 4 successes you need.
So, if we've already got it, then we don't need to worry about it.
Okay.
But,
all right.
If we wanted to, though.
If you wanted to, you could bring them on and it would count as an activation and all that. But
okay.
No, with Mason's 4 successes, and that means that you get a lot of information off this. So from a science perspective, these pods, as I described them last time, are, from the outside, they look like the Matrix pods where, they're just sort of battery farms with machines going this way and that. The difference is, now that you know how big V's body is supposed to be, you realize that these pods are actually rather large for what's inside of them. And what I mean by that is V's pod is, as she said earlier, more or less the size of your cargo bay here on the event horizon, which is saying something because the event horizon has a singular cargo bay that is currently full of foodstuffs and supplies and everything else, where if you were to bring one pod in, you'd already have to chuck some things out. But if 2 pods were to come in, you'd have to be very creative with the space you have, or a couch around a corner problem if you're familiar with that one. But from an engineering perspective, what I can tell you is that also what was said is correct. This is a neutronium-lined pod, meaning that this is made of the most dense and the most damage-resistant material ever known by any faction. Literally made from the crust of a neutron star. And it could, more likely than not, go into the event horizon of a black hole and not spaghettify.
Skin of a planet killer. Nice.
But as a reminder, you also can spend momentum to ask questions here if you want more.
Well, I can ask questions anyway, because I'm smart and stuff.
Yes, that's true.
So a question that I wouldn't mind us knowing the answer to is, based on what we can see of the pods, how easy would it be to adapt them to function off of our power grid?
Okay.
Or do they have a self-contained power unit?
I'll give that to you free because I think I forgot to tell you that. They do have a fusion reactor to each single pod, so they can self-sustain.
For at least a decent amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Spare no expense. How tricky would it be just to extract them from the pods?
Extracting the pod or extracting the person from the pod?
The person.
So, by the looks of it, this would be a... How to put this? There's a traumatic way of doing it and a safe way of doing it. The traumatic way, obviously faster. It is, again, riffing off the Matrix. You basically enter in a command and all the lines kind of go poof, 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 and just sort of pop off. The non-traumatic way is actually going into the pod itself and slowly disconnecting the person inside. And that is a lot more safe. And if I had to give you in mechanics terms, the fast way is a difficulty of 3. The long way is a difficulty of 5.
Oh, that's okay.
But obviously, the difficulty of 3 has a very high complication range.
Yeah.
Would there be any danger to the occupant while we were doing it the slow way?
As long as you don't roll a complication.
Okay. And then since I've asked 2 questions, I will create a trait, which would be pod schematic. Perhaps,
Pod schematic. All right, let me add that to the list here. Pod schematic.
which will lower difficulty of doing it the slow way.
Mm-hmm. Lower it to a 4.
Complication way. What do you think, engineer, doctor? Is that something you think you can pull off?
I'm sure we could pull it off, Captain. The question is, what V did give us some description of what she would require if taken out of the pod. We might want to evaluate whether or not we are able to provide that, especially given that we're not on a galaxy class. And so there's less stimulation or activity that is possible. We signed up for this. We're prepared for it. But she may not be. So as much as I don't really want to fill our entire cargo bay, the question is whether or not we want to start that way, or at least have it as a fail-safe in case something goes wrong.
Well, if it affects your decision any, I believe Techno threw threat at my face earlier. So why don't we activate that complication from chat, where you're actually getting a hail from the planet. As in, nobody has shown up on the bridge, nobody is projecting themselves anywhere on the ship. You're getting a legitimate hail from the planet below.
Oh, look, manners. That's progress. On screen.
All right. So appearing on screen is a woman that looks similar to V, but she has more stocky shoulders, longer hair. Instead of the red gem, hers is orange. But this individual says, "Am I reaching the Starfleet vessel in orbit? My name is G."
Hello, G. I'm Commander Mason.
Oh, good. I got the right people. I don't know what exactly is going on, but all Cytherians are, of course, aware of what happens around our planet as tradition and as protocol, and I just want to say if it affects your decision any, don't worry about me. Just, get V out of here. I make sure V is safe.
You're the friend.
I'm the other part of her faction, yes.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Likewise, I would have projected, but I thought perhaps a hail would be more appropriate.
I appreciate that. We're going to make every effort to get the both of you safely aboard the ship, or your pods aboard the ship, whichever works out to be the best course of action. However, I'm hoping to speak with the various factions of your homeworld, and hopefully this won't be necessary at all.
Well, what I can say is that there is definitely a lot of talks going on. I think they've decided that the Event Horizon, as much as it is an outside faction, your bridge will probably become the conference room.
My bridge?
Yes.
Seeing as we don't have much of a bigger room.
The entire planet. But sure, we could use the bridge. I would be happy to host the delegates from your planet.
I'll pass that along. But one other thing that might be relevant to you, Commander, and others, I've been doing some digging of my own into who sent those probes, and I think I'm like 90% sure it wasn't Castor himself. I think it was one of his underlings or one of his, lesser important Cytherians that did it.
I'm surprised your probe would actually carry out an order like that. It must have some sort of artificial intelligence, and most artificial intelligence are programmed not to cause harm to living creatures.
Well, our probes are programmed to seek out new technology and more or less reprogram it so that that new technology, new people can be brought to us. When we accidentally brought one of your ships, the Enterprise D, to us, we didn't actually reprogram your computers. We reprogrammed, what was his name? Reginald Barkley, if I remember correctly. But
Barkley,
the process was not
brain
permanent. We reprogrammed his brain temporarily, and then he brought the Enterprise D to us. We undid our changes and then sent the Enterprise D right back.
But that would be the core programming of the probes.
Correct. Where the intent of the probe is not to cause damage, but as we have seen, even with the Enterprise D, and with, I believe it was something called the Argus Array, the probes are not configured to work with Starfleet technology. There is a fundamental incompatibility. So by sending a probe against your vessel, it is I don't want to call it an act of war, but it's an act of aggression.
Any idea who this underling might be?
No, I'm still looking into it. Whoever did this covered their tracks pretty well.
And do you expect that would be this person's feelings would be a prevailing feeling amongst the isolationists, or is this one individual more likely to be something of a zealot?
Well, as evidenced by the fact that our faction's only 2 people, even one Cytherian voice has a great weight in our culture. as you may or may not know, there's only 50,000 Cytherians.
Let us know if we can help with that investigation.
Of course, I know this feels awkward because I'm the one that called you, but can I help in any other way? Do you need any other information?
Is there any information? Sorry to interrupt. Is there any information on the metabolic or other biological needs of your species from before you were in the pods, or even if we could get data on what the pods supply you?
Yes, I can send that along. One moment. And Gerald, you're sitting at your console. Then all of a sudden, your console begins to spark and beep as a large amount of data is sent to it. I hope that suffices.
You just see his eyes get huge. Thank you. That is. Oh, that is a lot.
Gee, if you were to accompany us, would you prefer to remain in your pod, or would it be more beneficial for you to be out of it for a journey such as this?
Is this a question to G, V, or just in general?
Gee,
Okay. So G kind of shrugs and says, well, I've never been outside my pod. Hell, I haven't even left the planet, even in projection form, so I'm all for new things.
perhaps your first time out of the pod should not be in a specialized prototype transport device. There's a lot about your biology that we don't know. I caution how it would affect you, a journey like ours, but thank you for your willingness to do the exciting thing.
Of course, and I should say I have done some scans of my own, and I think unless one of your crew has, what was it, the Temerian flu, I think I should be okay.
You
Well,
see
that's good news.
Geral's like slip a tricorder out, point it at himself, turn it, and like push a few buttons.
Good news, Drawal, you do not have the Temerian flu currently.
He slowly puts the tricorder back.
Without knowing how those probes, that probe were launched, or those probes were launched, I can't even begin to assist in that investigation. Is that done via computer? Do you have robots? How do you maintain anything if none of you leave your pods?
We have semi-intelligent machines that handle everything.
That has never gone wrong.
No, I have read some of your reports from the Enterprise D, and I believe even your Lieutenant Commander Data went rogue more than a few times.
It's important that you understand that the Enterprise D was a very particular ship with a very particular crew that ended up in a lot more chaos and trouble than most Federation vessels. That is not a perfect example of what happens on a starship.
And I think V chimes in at this and says, yes, all we have to look forward to on the event horizon is ice hockey. She flashes a thumbs up.
Good old team building.
That's not all we do, but okay, sure.
All right. Well, you guys stay safe. We're going to prep for some extractions, and then perhaps have a meeting with my senior staff before trying to mediate this crisis that your people are having at the moment.
All right, well, if you need me, I'm here. and I'll send over my comm frequency. Draw your console sparks again.
Ah,
Then yeah, comm goes quiet.
I don't think the console's supposed to spark like that.
no, generally not. Even if I have it in purely analog mode, as Commander Paris enjoys doing, it's not supposed to spark like that.
Okay, gentlemen, what are your thoughts of this particular mess we found ourselves into?
It's interesting. Not what I was expecting. I still think it's best that if we can get both V and G, all very interesting names, by the way, very different than Caster. But beside the point, if we can get them both, I think it would be probably best if we can keep them in their pods. That would lower any sort of complications that might arise from any strangeness that could affect their biology. Gives us more time to study their pods and their biology in a more contained environment. And while it's unfortunate, we'll have to clear out some of the cargo bay. I mean, theoretically, we can get them on board and then hit the coaxial, and we'll be home before we notice any sort of issues.
That is true.
We could always just strap them to the hull. More durable than the ship is.
That's true.
I mean, the simulator let us take a whale. It should be able to take a couple pods.
If we did have the pods attached by either grav plating or other means to the exterior of the ship, it's definitely, if it was close enough, it wouldn't be any extra sort of expenditure of power.
All right. Well, we can get plans in motion to do that. My understanding, they're going to let us extract the pods if we ask them. So once you're ready, engineering, we'll get that underway.
Do you want to first try the cargo bay version, or would you like to go the exterior route first?
How much space are we going to have to give up? What are we going to have to dump?
So if you want one pod, you'll have to dump about half. If you want both pods, you gotta dump all of it. Alternatively, you just take over people's quarters and just shove in a bunch of blue barrels and pray that a Klingon's not underneath of them.
I will relay that information.
Or you've got room in the closet. Just take a few of your supplies and just put them on top of the warp cores. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, nothing ever went bad with putting things next to warp cores that didn't belong there.
Let's get them attached to the hull first. I would prefer to have them extracted, and I understand that there's a risk to that. However, if something goes sideways, I would feel better if they were in the ship. And I would feel better if we had all of our photon torpedoes in the ship and the rest of our supplies in the ship if things go wrong.
So that we would still have to make room in the cargo bay to put a pod in, extract one person, and then put the pod back on the external
And
of
then
the
swap
ship,
them.
and then
Yeah.
swap them. Okay.
We'll have to do that by tractor beam and airlock, as if I recall correctly, they are not
Right.
amenable to transporters.
Yeah.
So it will be time consuming, but possible.
Any sort of extra time, of course, will leave us here longer and potentially more exposed for any sort of hostile actions, of course.
I don't know if we're in any danger per se. I think we're in less danger right up
Now,
until we bring V and G aboard. I think danger increases once they're here.
Agreed. And the process of getting them out of their pods and resituating them, that will be a time that we need to just keep our guard up, because I think that we'll have a lot of eyes on us for sure.
And what about this mediation? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I think that we should do as much observing and uh, seeing how they interact with each other as possible to determine uh, the severity of each of these different factions first before we attempt to interject in any way. We still know so little about their culture. We're in that danger zone of diplomatic snafus, saying something when we have no idea what the actual effects of what we're saying are.
I would tend to agree. We need to figure out what exactly stopped them from Darmok and Jalad to Nagra before we can suggest another.
Remember, our role will be to mediate their discussion, not pass judgment on anyone.
Yes, Captain.
We're here to help them talk, not tell them what to decide. Well, if there's nothing further, I guess let's go through whatever pile of data you just got and see about getting these people off planet.
All right.
I'll start making some space in the cargo bay.
All right. So
Sisyphus when the rock fell.
there you go. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to hard cut the scene because I want it to be a new scene, and I know that changes some of your abilities. So there's your delineation. I also am going to institute the rule that you do lose a point of momentum here because it's a new scene. Normally I ignore that rule because I don't like cutting off roleplay, but this definitely feels like one of those moments where end time passes happens.
Yeah.
So definitely lose some momentum here. You'll go down to 2.
And fade to commercial break, come back.
Yep, fade to commercial break, come back. And for some reason we got ads for gummy bears for whatever reason. So, you know. But anyway, we now cut to the emergence of the 5 factions on the bridge of the event horizon. Now, they're not obviously the giant heads that took up most of the space. They now have been appropriately sized heads that are now just sort of floating there. You, of course, have Castor, and you, of course, have V. They are on the left and the right, the far left, the far right. And then you have 3 that form almost a half circle in between them. And except for V, all of them look to be old men, or at least elderly individuals. And they also all have different colored gems, where, again, Castor's a blue, V is a bright red. The other ones have yellow, green, and violet, if that matters to you. But as they start to introduce themselves, you already know Castor and V. The one with the yellow gem introduces themselves as Saber. The one with the purple gem introduces themselves as Ruler. And the one with the green gem introduces themselves as Medic.
Welcome aboard.
Sorry, Castor was blue and V was red, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, to run, I'll let me type this up in my notes too, because that way I can just do a big old push for you all. So blue is Castor.
I think I got it.
Yellow was Ruler, and then green was, and also Bean just gave you all some momentum. So
Nice.
And there's the threat sped too,
Yep. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
as all things should be. So I'm actually going to take 2 threat for that. So because I was really hurting on the threat there. So thank you, Bean. So green was Saber. Did I say green was Saber or was yellow Saber? I'm already mixing them up.
Yellow was Saber,
yeah.
Medic was green.
Yeah.
Okay, so yellow was that. Purple was Ruler. That's what it was.
Yeah, purple was
Okay.
Ruler.
See, this is why it's important for GMs to write what they say down, because it's a thing. All right, so green
You started
was
saying
medic.
colors and words, and I was like, oh God, oh God, oh God.
Yeah, you know,
Get the
I tried to
notepad
color
out.
code them to make sense, and then I was like, oh no, I need to write this down or I'm going to get mixed up. All right, so here you go. Let me put it in chat for you. There you go.
Saber, got it.
Yeah, to sort of start things off, does Mason want to say anything, or does anybody else want to say anything, or are you just going to let them sort of run their own meeting until you have to intervene?
My intention was simply to welcome them to the Event Horizon, and that we hope to be able to assist you in this discussion, but mostly let them do their own thing.
Okay. So the first one to speak then after that is going to be Ruler. And Ruler speaks with a very imperious voice, very confident, very not sure of themselves, but definitely speaks with the sort of gravitas you would expect of somebody like Picard or a Cisco or maybe a Janeway, depending on who's writing her that day, kind of a thing. But Ruler says, "Thank you all for joining me for this meeting. I believe we all know we are here to discuss the grave circumstances that nearly led to V's harm. I think it is safe to say that something has gone terribly wrong, that we are needing of outsiders to mediate a meeting which should have been handled in-house." And then Yellow speaks up, and Yellow speaks with a more airy voice, a little bit more, how to say this, not exactly feminine, but more of a falsetto, I think is a better term to use. And I'm not going to do the falsetto, but you can just imagine it in your heads. But Saber says, "I do agree, Ruler, that this is very much a strange circumstance. We have not had a Cytherian tried to harm another Cytherian in over, I shudder to think how many millennia. It is unheard of." And then Castor speaks up and says, "Yes, I do agree that this is grave, and I do recognize that it came from my own faction, but I believe that, well, to put it bluntly, I'm not so sure we can really crack down on it, to use a parlance of choice. People are entitled to their opinion. People are entitled to send out probes to explore regions they're interested in. We can restrict access to launch probes to the person responsible if we discover who it might be, but we would be depriving them of the only exploration we are capable of." And then they start having a long-winded discussion of, well, what does exploration really mean? And stuff like that. But as they're sort of just going back and forth, I did want to kind of focus on you three. Is there anything in particular you're honing in on that you want me to describe a little bit more? Or are you just, once again, just sort of in the wings, ready to jump in as necessary?
Mason's trying to determine if anyone's lying or
Okay.
hiding the truth.
Yeah.
In that case, we can definitely do a roll about that. Why don't you give me a insight and insight and command. Let's make this a difficulty of 3.
Insight and command. Okay, I have a focus in cold reading or psychology,
Both would apply.
and I have a value trust but verify.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I will spend my determination on this.
Okay.
I'll assist if we require it.
More is better.
Yeah.
All right.
Probably
So Zephyr, you
best
would also
not to
assist
have
with
me
a
assist.
yeah, Zephyr, you would also assist with an insight command on your part.
Copy.
All right, well, there's the 3 you need immediately. And then let's see if Zephyr gets you any additional momentum. Nope, unfortunately not. But hey, it's not a complication, so.
There you go.
So, Mason, what I will tell you is that Medic has not said a single word this entire time. Obviously, Medic is nodding and kind of giving those affirmations that they're listening, but Medic has not said a single thing this entire time. And what you're also noticing is that as much as V is Castor's daughter, they are very much past the pretense of, how to put this, they're not fighting like a human teenage daughter and father would do, but they're getting pretty close, where it's getting a little bit catty, as it were. But as far as you're able to tell, none of them are lying.
One of them is also saying nothing, so.
Mm-hmm.
None of them are lying. Okay.
Do we know what faction this medic individual is part of, slash a leader of, slash a representative of?
You could ask.
I don't know if it's really our place to. Can we
Jarrell's
phrase?
gonna lean over to the captain and be like, Captain, it may be advantageous for us as the requested mediators
Yeah,
to know who
everyone is mediating for.
what we are mediating for, because we know
Yeah.
that they are leaders of individual factions, but aside from their names, they didn't really identify themselves or what they are striving for.
Sure. Gentlemen, just for my own records, I'm curious. There's five of you, five factions. We know that the East faction is small. It has a very small club, I guess. And we understand that Castor is the represents the isolationists, which, to my knowledge, is the largest of the factions on the planet. But the other three, I'm not sure who. I could guess by your names, but I'm not sure exactly which factions you represent to the size of your particular factions.
Mhm.
Could you explain that?
Yeah, so they go down the line. I'll even put it in chat because I thought ahead on that part at least. So Castor says, well, my faction is the exploration of space, and we are the isolationists. V, you already know, is also the exploration of space, but they prefer the more Starfleet approach. Ruler oversees the exploration of culture, as in Cytherian specific works and governance and things of that nature. Saber covers the exploration of technology and the advancement thereof, and Medic oversees the exploration of self.
The exploration of self. I mean, in a lot of ways, gentlemen, that's the crux of this entire conversation that you're having, isn't it? You're exploring your own culture, your own self.
And for the first time, Medic speaks. And Medic is a very thick baritone. Not quite a pack-a-day smoker, but still a very rich tone all the same. Again, I'm not going to do it, but just imagine. But Medic says, you are correct, and that is why I have not said much. I believe that had V not decided to make her own faction, she would have been a part of mine.
Where I come from, when there's a problem or a crisis or a challenge, we typically lean towards our experts. We look to the smartest, the brightest, the best leaders, the most charismatic, depending on the particular problem. It seems strange to me that there's a faction on your planet that is represented with the sole intention of exploring what it means to be Cytherian. And the five of you are discussing next step for your civilization on a Federation vessel instead of looking towards Medic to see what his thoughts are.
And Medic speaks up and says, well, my faction is one of the minor ones. We only have 10 of our number.
Well, if one voice can cause this much trouble and cause one of your 50,000 to raise arms up against another one of your people the first time in several millennia, then your group, I would say, would have a significant say.
Mason, if you could give me a presence command. I think this
Presence
is one of those
command.
moments where a difficulty 5 is relevant.
Oh God, guys, you're gonna have to help.
Yep.
So definitely a presence command, definitely difficulty of 5. I think I'm going to
Definitely
save
use
my
that
thread for
momentum.
later.
Definitely use that momentum.
I'm trying to be charismatic.
I have a command of 1, so
Well, I got 10 and 4 here, so I'm likely gonna do the roll, but I don't really
Yeah.
have a
well, I was just saying if you wanted
variety.
me an assist, I don't have
Oh,
anything.
I would take whatever. I've used my determination, so
Yep.
we don't have an XO. Get it
Yeah, I
back.
mean all assists. It's not the greatest. I don't have any applicable foci, but
Could
yeah.
I no that I don't
Well, if it
know.
affects
Never mind.
anything, Peter, you do have determination and
That's what I was
veteran.
that's what I was looking at. Um okay, we're trying I was reading some stuff. What are we trying to do again so I can see if I've got a value?
You're mostly just trying to convince the Cytherians that this is an exploration of self, this is an exploration of their culture, that something
Mhm.
needs to change here because it caused someone to take up arms and over, 2 millennia to harm another Cytherian.
Okay. Um if I'm able um man, I'd love to use learn from the past on this one. I'm just trying to figure out how I could use it.
Let me actually look at learn from the past. Let's put it in chat so we can read it.
Yeah.
When you succeeded a task to recall events you're familiar with, you generate 1 momentum. So that would have been useful
Oh,
in
while ago.
learning their culture, but on this
Yeah.
roll, I don't think it helps you here.
Yeah. Because I would have to, unless there's something that I could come up with from Temerian culture that would be applicable in helping them to learn a lesson, but I don't know. Out of character, I don't know if the Temerians have anything about that.
Make it up. It's your call.
That's true.
It's part of the beautiful part of Star Trek. You don't know an alien
That's
thing,
true.
you invent the alien thing.
It hasn't never been written, so let's see if we can tap that, and then also maybe the value of solutions come from adaptability.
I like it. So what that will mean is, Jaral, you are already rolling a 1, so there's already 2 successes on the board from your assist. And just take off a point of determination, and I guess re-roll your veteran to see if you get that determination right back.
Nice.
Okay, so I don't have. Okay, I'm rolling 1 die. Using determination. Okay.
I think it's underneath your control.
Oh, well, I may not have done that right.
Well, that's the assist, so the assist roll has been made. So that is
Okay.
correct.
And then I need to roll just for.
Okay, so unfortunately you don't get it back, but still a good spend all the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mason, I need to see 3 more successes here. You're also muted.
I'll spend the 2 momentum and give you a threat for the 2 extra dice,
Okay, I will always take a treat.
because I think that's the only chance we're gonna get.
Unless you want to throw even more threat at me.
No. No, you have a habit of spending all your threat.
Mm-hmm.
Some GMs hoard it and don't use it, so see what happens.
So that is a grand total of 7 successes, meaning that you do have 2 momentum overall, meaning you could spend that 2 momentum to ignore that complication.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea.
Probably.
I really want to ask a question.
You still get the free one anyways, right?
Yeah, you still get the free one.
Yeah, we'll ignore that complication.
Okay. So, what is your question before I launch into the monologue again?
My question is, um, basically, I have two questions, and most of it's really just down to creating that trait using rapid hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's essentially psychological questions. Does someone
Mm-hmm.
seem nervous or does someone seem angry? That sort of thing. I'll ask those two.
Okay.
And the trait I'm trying to make is psychological profile,
Okay.
just so we have an understanding of how they behave.
Okay. So what I would tell you then is that Ruler, the one in charge of the exploration of Cytherian culture, they have been... Is taciturn the right word? Might be the right word. They've been very stoic, very poker-faced, as it were, but there's still slight twitches in their eyes when somebody says something. There's still almost like a reserved fury, if you will, that you're seeing in their body language. Or I guess their head language, because they're just floating heads. But you do note that Ruler is definitely unhappy about something, whether it's the attempted murder, whether it's the conversation itself. Ruler definitely is not thrilled at the moment.
Okay.
And yeah, let me make that trait for you. So you now have psychological profile. Psych profile. All right, there you go.
And if those guys use that, they'll get 2 extra momentum.
Nice. So you see those things, Mason, and Terral, you add in a Temerian sort of story, as it were.
Yep.
And everyone listens, though once again, Ruler, the lines on his face deepen just a little bit. But Caster, for his part, says, "You are correct, Commander. This is an unprecedented moment in our history that will probably shape for generations to come. I only wish I knew who was responsible for the probe, but again, as my daughter might have told you already, we have been unable to pinpoint who is responsible. Now, I know your Federation of Planets numbers in the trillions and the billions, and perhaps even further along if you include all the member worlds, but we are 50,000. If one person does not agree with something, that can be a tremendous thing. And to take away a person's probe access or a person's access to information, information is what sustains us. We cannot simply act on a whim. We need hard proof about who this is."
Oh, that's easy. There's only 50,000 of you, and none of you can leave the planet. So whoever ordered that probe will be found out eventually. Soon, likely. Within days or weeks. The crime's impossible to hide. Because you guys don't have crime. You don't know how to cover it up. So
I was waiting for somebody to say it. I was wondering if my hint got dropped. So, here's what's going to happen, Mason, is the moment you say that, Ruler actually starts coughing. And it's not like oh, I have something in my throat. He's just like, kind of a cough.
Something to add, Ruler?
Yes, and his head turns to look at Caster's head. "I find it very questionable that we know it's a member of your faction, Caster, but we don't know who it is. Perhaps you would care to explain why that is, how that is even possible, how records such as this could go missing, and it's only your faction who has launched probes in the recent year." And Caster, for his part, if a head can shrug, shrugs, and says, "I'm sorry, I've tried to access the probe launch data, but it has been unfortunately routed to my command code because I am the one who approves all codes or all probes that launch. But I can assure you, I was not trying to kill my own daughter." Now, if you would like to insight that, we can make it a roll, but at face value, he seems sincere.
I would like to insight that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's definitely going to be another insight and command. Since you have a psych profile trait, that's going to lower it from a 4 to a 3.
I do have psychology as a focus,
Mm-hmm.
so we might as well use that. We don't have any momentum. I don't think this is worth getting threat for. So
Okay. Yeah, with one success, you got nothing. Unfortunately, they're just hard to read at the moment.
well, body language when you only have a head to work with is tough.
Right.
Yeah, it is a little tough. But Ruler, for his part, says, well, if your faction is attempting to harm other Cytherians, then perhaps we need to revoke your probe access. And at that gets everybody shouting, like, no, you can't do that. That's taking away freedom. That's taking away information. Kind of a thing. Do you literally raise your hand? I think V notices first and says, everyone, quiet. The commander has something to say.
Thanks, Pete. You missed what I said. I think the person responsible is going to be found out. It doesn't have to be found out today. The debate that you're having about restricting access that's not the conversation you should be having. The conversation you should be having is, what do you as a species want to allow in your culture? Is V allowed to leave? That's a big question. Is someone allowed to stop her? That's a big question. What happens when someone tries to stop someone from doing something? Because you don't have lawyers or laws. Does that mean nothing? And even restricting probe access, who gets to make that decision if there's no law? Why do you get to make it? Because you have the biggest head or the right color gem?
And V actually laughs at that. Like, despite herself, V laughs and says, he does have a point. There's something to be said with our choices of colors. But no, you are completely correct, Commander. The only reason that you see the 5 of us before you is because we are the leaders of our factions, and we are the only ones that have the following to say something and have it followed.
I understand why you're here. And outside the fact that where I'm from, my particular planet, has not had great luck with a bunch of old white people making all the decisions. But V at least is here to lend a new perspective. However, you shouldn't focus on who did something wrong right now, because again, that problem will solve itself. You will find out in time. There's no way to hide it, because again, you don't know how to cover your tracks, because no one breaks any laws. So I'm sure my security officer could figure that out in an hour if you give us access. Probably less. What you need to determine is if V's allowed to do what she's chosen to do.
And I think at this, Medic actually speaks up and says, well, I have no objections to letting Lieutenant Commander Zephyt poke through our logs. But to answer your question, Commander, I see no reason why V can't leave. She has free will. She is not confined to this planet. If she and her faction wish to leave, they may do so. In fact, they may go so with my faction's blessing.
Does she need your faction's blessing?
No, but you did make it ratherly apparent that I needed to speak for my faction, or at least so I felt. And then Saber speaks up and says, I'm in agreement. Let's give Lieutenant Commander Zephyt access to our logs, and if he wants to leave, he can leave. And then everybody looks to Castor, and Castor says, well, I'm afraid I must be the lone dissenting voice so far. I do not agree that showing the lieutenant commander, our logs would solve anything in the long run other than causing strife. And I think you already know my view about my daughter leaving the planet. And then finally, we go to Ruler. And Ruler, face again, sort of very stern, says, I am in agreement with Caster. There is something to be said for not simply throwing open our records to everyone. As for the matter of V leaving, it's unheard of. It's strange. And then V obviously can't vote for herself, so we have a stalemate on our hands.
Costa, forgive me, of your own word earlier, you said that you wanted to find whoever orchestrated this attack on your daughter. Why now, when presented with a course that could directly locate this individual, do you feel that now you don't wish to give us that information?
Well, there's a difference between our looking into this matter and an outsider looking into this matter.
The difference is perspective, I think. I believe that an outside perspective in a situation such as this is more favorable to preconceived notions that each of you already have coming into the conversation.
Present security difficulty of 3 was lowered from a 4 based on the trait that was made earlier.
Copy. Present security.
Let's take a gander at your focuses here.
I have investigation.
Would apply.
Alright. You said diff 3?
Yep, diff 3. And if it does matter, you do have bold security, so as long as you give me one threat, you can reroll at least one.
Do. Yeah. Yeah, I'll definitely give you a threat. And we'll do 3 die here. Set present security, that's what I was worried about. Let's see. I think I'm gonna do a value here to reroll.
Well, you might want to roll your bold security first, just in case it crits.
That's true.
Okay, so now you would need determination to reroll.
Yeah. How do we feel about just never let your guard down? Both in that, we are observing this, but also from the perspective of one of these individuals more guarded in this situation. It appears to be Caster, right? Why is he not letting his guard down in this situation?
Okay. Yeah, I like it. So go ahead and mark off the determination, and you can reroll as many dice as you wish.
Right. Let's just do the 2 that I was unsuccessful on.
All right, that'll get you your 3. Very nice. So you say these things to Caster, and Caster relents. He says, you are correct. I simply am concerned that no one has looked at the Cytherian records other than Cytherians for many millennia.
If it makes you feel any better, I'll give you my Starfleet word that I will only search for things that are relevant to the current investigation. I'm not extremely interested in whatever your hundreds of years of past history is currently.
Caster closes his eyes, shakes his head, and says, very well. And on the matter of letting the lieutenant commander look through our records, I agree.
Thank you.
Zephyt, the moment that said, your console begins to spark and be overflowed with information.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Now, I feel like this should be a pretty easily obtainable goal. If they're all tied to their own individual pods and their own individual, basically computer systems that are each tied to an individual Cytherian, shouldn't I be able to feasibly backtrace this? Even if a different command code was used, it would have to be used from somebody else's console, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I can't leave the pod.
Right, exactly. So I should be able to figure out where the pod was that sent the commands for the probes, and that should pretty firmly give us a point.
So
So,
you actually, because you thought of it that way, you know instantly who did it.
oh, sure,
It is
yeah.
the Cytherian to the left of V's pod. It is literally V's neighbor.
Okay, all right, okay. Yeah,
They can't even see each other.
I'll take the information and go to my computer and come back in like 45 seconds and be like, I got it. I figured it out.
So quickly.
Soketh, his eyes uncovered.
Yeah, it's generally Starfleet investigations are far more complicated than what we've been presented with today. But here's the information that I found, and I guess, share it with the class. Whoever this individual is, the pod directly to the left of V. All traces return to that location. I can see the inputted code for caster, but it all came from this pod's origin point.
And the Cytherians access this data in their own way, and Caster seems taken aback, but Ruler now looks furious. Says, "You mean to implicate my own son in this?"
I had no knowledge of who I was implicating. I was simply conveying the facts of what I was able to ascertain.
And I think there is that stony silence for a little bit before Caster speaks up and says, "I believe I shall also now relent on the matter of letting V leave. Perhaps it would be best if you took V and her fellow G and departed, Commander. I think the Cytherians as a whole have much talking to do that isn't going to be helped by mediation."
I agree. I think you also should work at keeping your kids in line, because they all seem to be causing trouble.
Well, they are children.
I don't even know how you make them, since you never leave your pods, but
Well, there's this long and involved process which I could get into, but it's not relevant.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this particular meeting's adjourned, unless you gentlemen have something else to bring up.
No, and one by one, the floating head just sort of boop out of existence until it's just V, and she says, "Well, I was not expecting that."
Do you know this ruler's son, or
Mean? Yeah, he's the pod to my left.
did you say what was his name? Mean?
Mean.
Oh, okay.
M-I-E-N. Mean.
Of course it is.
Yep. All right. Well, glad
Did
we got
you-
that sorted out.
Did you guys date?
No, I mean, I have hardly interacted with him.
I was guessing lover scorn. Scorn lover. That's what I was almost certain. I would have put money on it.
Oh,
Or-
no, we Cytherians don't really date. The whole romantic process for us is like getting kicked in the stomach and then smelling skunk, but it's not a skunk, it's worse than a skunk. So it's very unpleasant. We repopulate very carefully.
No reproduction on my ship.
I wasn't planning on it.
Let's get your friend.
All right. Cut to a new scene, because it does matter.
Yep.
And what I'd like you all to imagine is the event horizon slowly descending until you are able to get to right in line with V and G's pods. What we sort of see once again is like the Matrix, where it's just a big column with crackling energy running up, sustaining the pods, machinery of all different kinds floating between. But what you already see is that some of the machinery is already disconnecting the pods from the greater structure. And for this, I think we turn to Giral, since you're our engineer here.
Yep.
Giral, you have to make a very important tractor beam roll here.
Yep.
So, what I'm going to say is that this is going to be we're going to do 2 rolls. So, one's going to be for V, one's going to be for G. I'm going to let you decide who goes first. But this is overall going to be a control and engineering. This will be assisted by the ship's structure engineering. Difficulty of 4 after accounting for pod schematics.
Okay.
And can I assist with control con to pilot their ship in a favorable location for?
If you give me a threat, because you're out of momentum at the moment.
I will give you a threat. That allows me to assist on both the rolls, or
Yes,
that
on both.
a threat? Copy.
Yeah. Let's do G first.
Okay.
Work
Just
out the
'cause-
kinks.
Yep. As bad as it sounds, but
Right. Yep.
Let's see. I don't think I have a focus that helps here, because I don't know that EPS systems is really.
Yeah, well, maybe reverse engineering, because you're having to take over the power draw from the pods and put it on
That's
the.
true. Yeah, I have
put
to,
it
I have
on
to
the-
figure out how they're using their anti-grav and rework a little bit so that ours don't blow up on each
Right. Yeah, I'll give you reverse engineering on this.
other. Okay. Yay. Okay, so I'll use a focus. 2 dice. How much threat are we sitting at? 5.
Treat.
I'll-
Do I get a treat?
I think I'm gonna give you a treat so I can have
I
3
get a
dice.
treat. Yay.
Yep. All right, let's see what happens.
Oh, and I even got more treat from chat. Thank you, chat. So that's 3
No.
successes, which means Zephyr, I need to see 1 more.
Yep. I do have focus helm operations for this.
Mm-hmm. There
There
you
we
go. You
go.
actually get a
Nice.
point of momentum back. So, narratively, what it looks like is a tractor beam lances out from the back of the. Oh, and there's momentum from chat as well. So you're up to 2 momentum.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what happens is the tractor beam lances out from the back of the event horizon, locks on to G's pod, slowly pulls it away, and if I remember correctly, you wanted to do outside on the ship, slowly maneuvers it around until it's on one of the part of the arrowhead on the top of the vessel, and then locks it in place with grav plating. And there's just a subtle shift in gravity, just kind of a small shift that runs through the inertial dampeners. But you have 1 out of 2 pods. Congratulations.
Nice.
Hooray. Okay, so we're basically doing the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
although
But I have chat complications.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
But-
what's going to happen is chat's complication is going to bump the difficulty back up to a 5. I'm also, since I have 6 threat, going to spend 5 of it, such that it is now a complication range of 16 to 20. Which is basically you're either successing or you're complicating here.
Or you're complicating, yeah.
No pressure, Peter.
Well, I'm definitely using a momentum to get a 3rd die.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
For sure. Can I use a determination of respect the machine, understand the machine?
Yeah, because you have a saved point of determination, so yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to use a determination. And that's, I think, what I can do.
Peter, when the dice fell. Here we go.
Got it.
Oh,
Yeah, Peter, when the dice fell. Mm-hmm.
there it is.
All right, well, let's see Zephyr's assist roll, and we'll know how many dice we got to reroll. Okay, so Peter, Gerald would have to use the final point of determination because you had 3 coming into this
Yep.
session. Roll for veteran. Veteran can trigger.
Oh, right.
What isn't your control? Is it an 11 or a 12?
It's an 11.
Okay, so you would have to use your last remaining point of determination to re-roll that 20 or the 11 or both.
Let's reroll both.
Okay, crit fish.
You're a
So
bold man.
So 2 dice, same complication range, same stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but not the determination because that'll
Yeah, that's already factored
cost
in.
that. Yeah, that's
There you go. You turn
Oh,
it into
beautiful.
the not only, so that is 7 successes, 6 successes. Yeah,
yeah.
6 successes.
Yeah.
So you get a point of momentum back, and the reason that the threat spend was not just to make you, sweat mechanically. Narratively, what happens is as V's pod is drawn away, Mean's pod tries to shunt electricity towards her pod, if you get my meaning. But you're anticipating it, Jaral, and Zephit, you are both on the ball, where you are able to not only get the tractor beam away quick enough, but Zephit, you also are able to shunt some power to the shielding, and that electrostatic discharge is completely dissipated.
Ian is not a nice guy.
No, he's not.
It would be mean.
Mean.
Mm-hmm. But no, you have both pods. They're both secure. You can leave at any time.
Good job, engineering
Thank you, Captain.
and security.
Yeah, let's get out of here.
All right, plot his course home.
And as
We're
we
gonna make a jump. Take a look out your window. This should be exciting.
Yeah.
And as the event horizon soars back up out of the atmosphere, and then we see it get into the atmosphere, and then do sort of the space folding jumps away. Then the camera lingers back on Mean's pod for a moment, and again, all the pods glowed with white light and just sort of standard utopia. Everything's white and clean, and etc., etc.
Yeah.
His pod actually begins to turn into blacks and reds, almost as if it's corrupted a little bit.
Oh, no.
And that's where we'll end today's session. Well done, indeed.
Uh-oh.
That won't come back to bite anybody later at all.
No.
It's fine, guys. We're leaving the Cytherians, so we're never going to see them again. Problem solved.
And there's so many campaigns that are going on right now. Me might not show up in ours. It could be somebody else's.
Yeah, Mean will just show up down the line for
We've
somebody.
created a problem for someone else.
That's right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But no, what'd you all think? It was one of my first attempts at doing the Cytherians. I've loved them as a species, but then I was like, they need some fleshing out a little bit.
Oh, that was great.
Yeah.
They're all
I like-
very interesting.
Yeah, some politics. You don't see too many
Yeah,
like core red sessions, right?
right,
Mhm.
right, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, you
And
did great, Ravens. That was great.
yeah, that was very good.
Mason killed it.
Or gold. I guess they're called gold. Gold sessions. Command. The
No, they're
command
still
ones.
red. They're
Yeah.
still red. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, Twitch, stick around because we're going to raid somebody, but YouTube, we'll see you later. Bye-bye, YouTube.
Bye, YouTube.